In latest developments from Canada, Justin Trudeau has posted on X late last night about his conversation with UAE President Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed. Trudeau said, and I quote, "We also spoke about India and the importance of upholding and respecting the rule of law." Justin Trudeau made serious allegations of extrajudicial killings against India, which have crushed diplomatic relations with our nation. He has made these allegations without providing any concrete proof to India. So not only has Justin Trudeau made serious allegations, he is also now trying to create a lobby of nations against India. It's important to note that the President of the UAE has not posted about his phone call between himself and Justin Trudeau. Trudeau says he doesn't want to sour relations with India, but his actions speak otherwise. What really is Justin Trudeau's end goal? We take this conversation forward. I have with me a special guest with us on the broadcast, Dr. Mukesh Aghi, the President and CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Dr. Aghi, thank you so much for taking our time to speak to NewsX. My first question to you, has the Canadian Prime Minister been able to convincingly build a case against India?
Well, the answer is no. When you build a case, you got to provide evidence. But I think the intent is not about building the case. The intent here is to basically appease the local domestic politics. If the intent was to abate the noise which was created of the earlier Nijjar killing, then you wouldn't go down to allies of India and put a case to them. So I think the intentions are not correct here. The intentions are to keep the issue flared all across, and I think that's not healthy for the two countries.
Absolutely. So at the same time, do you think it was irresponsible then to make allegations without really backing them up?
Well, when you have a prime minister of a country going to a parliament and stating that you have credible allegation, to me, right there, you have a problem. And the problem is you are saying that you have allegation, but without providing any credibility evidence, that causes a problem between discussion between two countries itself. But more important is you have to look at the intent. And I have to bring up the issue. They have painted Nijjar as a priest, a plumber, and a decent citizen of Canada, but he was on the no-fly list of Canadian Airlines. Why is it a plumber on the no-fly list with Canadian Airlines? Obviously, he was a problem. And to be able to basically flare that issue without providing evidence shows your intents are not right.
At the same time, Dr. Aghi, have Justin Trudeau's accusations managed to affect India's credibility and standing in the United States of America?
Well, I think it does cause concern. While the US has been quite limited and said we need to basically, India needs to collaborate, cooperate with Canada. But I think you have to understand that if you continue having this issue going around to Indian allies, it will provide certain leverage to these nations. And I think that's not healthy, because what you're doing is basically providing a chasm between some of these countries. Yes, there's maturity, they will react, listen, and react in according to their intent and position. But I don't think it will have a long-term fissure between the United States and India, because our relationship are not tied to just one issue. Our relationship are geopolitical, our relationships are on economic issues, our relationship are people to people. We have almost 5 million Indian Americans here. So I think it would be very hard to dislodge that, but it does causes concern that you have a prime minister going around rather than trying to abate the issue, keep on flaring the issue.
At the same time, Dr. Aghi, quite interestingly, there are photographs of Hardeep Nijjar carrying an AK-47. So one would assume that Canadian intelligence agencies are aware of his background, of his rap sheet, as you've also pointed out that he was on a no-fly list. How is it that some of these terror links were not highlighted then with equal vigor?
Well, that's where I have a problem because you say rule of the law. You apply rule of the law within your own country, but that rule of the law does not apply into another country, which is India. You have an individual who's trying to be a secessionist, trying to divide a country of India by proclaiming Khalistan, by opening a consulate of Khalistan in Vancouver. To me, that's not a simple plumber. That's not a simple preacher. And when you say, oh, he used to go to local shooting range. You don't go with a machine gun to a shooting range as a farmer. You're trying to kill squirrels here. You have bigger intent, larger intent. So I think you have a double standards here. And if you're going to be applying rule of law, then it should be applied to India also.
Absolutely. And talking about some of the impact here, Dr. Agi, the loss of Indian students and immigration could result in a $15 billion blow to the Canadian economy. Why has that not registered then with Justin Trudeau?
Well, I don't know about that, but I think what we have to do is look at the bigger relationship. We have 230,000 Indian students in Canada. Canada had invested over $55 billion in India through its pension funds. And I think the economic relationship will get impacted. You have almost 2+ million Indian Canadians in Canada. They are unable to fly back to meet with their family during holiday seasons. So I think what we are doing is taking your personal politics and leveraging national interest. And to me, that's not a healthy sign.
Okay. But at the same time, Dr. Agi, Justin Trudeau's not got a lot of vocal support yet. He's now trying to lobby even the Emiratis. Why do you think he's so adamant on building this narrative against India?
Well, he has to keep on appeasing the Sikh party which supports him. Without them, he can't be in power. And so he has to keep on saying to them, I'm working for you. I'm trying to support your intention of creating a separate Khalistan in India. So yesterday was the Americans, today is the Emiratis, then he'll go to others. But you have to understand, this is creating an opportunity for people to divide US-India relationship. The Chinese are basically in the social media talking a lot about this, how US is not standing up to India. You have Putin basically praising Modi and India's success at G20 and other aspects. So what we are seeing is suddenly a lot of countries who are not interested in having a strong US-India relationship are leveraging that. And I think Prime Minister Trudeau needs to realize that hey, your national interests are of more important than your political party interest itself.
And do you think through this incident, there's now been highlighted the whole hypocrisy of a good terrorist versus a bad terrorist? Is there still a good terrorist and bad terrorist hypocrisy out there?
Well, there's nothing called a good terrorist or a bad terrorist. A terrorist is a terrorist. And basically what we are doing is applying certain rule of the law, which is in Canada, and saying, okay, for Canada, it works fine. You have to go back 1970 in October when Pierre Trudeau basically declared War Measurement Act when Quebec separatists were trying to break away from Canada. And they were slaughtered, they were crushed. And basically, then you had before that, you had the First Nation, the local indigenous people. The children were snatched and put into basically separate boarding schools. And so there was no rule of law there at that time. So I think it's important that you can't have a separate standards for one country and separate standard for other countries. Rule of law is rule of law, and it has to be applicable all across.
Absolutely. Dr. Agi, before we let you go, sir, one last question. What do you think is now going to be the way forward between India and Canada?
Well, I think you have to look at from India's side. India has stopped making any comments. India is trying to basically bring the noise down, is trying to, in a constructive way, find a solution. And if you have Prime Minister Trudeau going around raising issue with the UAE, Sheikh Al Nahyan and others, I think that's not healthy. I think it's important that mature minds sit down. It's healthy that there is a discussion. try to sort the issue out, and keep on building the relationship between two great nations. It is important that there's a win-win situation for both countries, both from a trade perspective, from education perspective, and so it's important that both nations sit down and sort this one out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Mukesh Aghi, for joining us on the broadcast to give us your perspective on what's happening between India and Canada. I take that opportunity to bring in our other guests as well, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat with us on the broadcast, and Professor Prof Nalapat, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, with us as well. Ambassador Kapoor, I'd like to begin by asking you, sir, why do you think Justin Trudeau has made this phone call to the president of the UAE? He is discussing, of course, Israel on one hand, which makes sense. A war has broken out there, but he's also taking this opportunity to sort of complain about India.
Thank you, Devika. Now, Justin Trudeau is, flailing like a fish out of water because he is not getting much support internally within Canada and externally with other countries. He has been trying very hard with the Five Eyes, for example, and not many of them are really coming out in categorical statements in support of Canada. So he is trying, any and every angle to try to keep his argument going on the world political forums. I don't know how much success he is receiving because the UAE and India relations are extremely close. We are very well aligned. There's tremendous amount of investment in each other's countries. The number of Indian diaspora working in UAE is one of the biggest today, for example. So to try to disrupt that sort of relationship, where UAE is one of the first countries in the Middle East in modern times, which has given permission, for example, to build a very big temple. And though there were temples in the ancient time, but now to hear that, a temple is being constructed in the UAE, it was one of the first countries in the Middle East to recognize Israel. It has always been in close consultation with the Indian leadership on a lot of global issues. Now, coming even to the Israel situation, for example, today, the statements which have been released by a large number of countries in the Islamic world have mentioned both the countries, Israel and Hamas, Gaza administration, etc., on an equal basis, as if both have created this havoc and mayhem and violence. UAE stands out in this respect as one of the probably the only Islamic country which says, I'll read it out. The United Arab Emirates on Sunday described attacks carried out by the Palestinian Islamist faction Hamas against Israeli towns as a serious and grave escalation. The UAE Foreign Ministry in a statement also said it was appalled by reports that Israeli civilians were taken as hostages from their homes. Civilians on both sides must always have full protection under international humanitarian law and must never be a target of conflict. So you can see that besides, having a sort of a very categorical statement on this issue, I don't think Justin Trudeau would have got any brownie points from his call with the UAE leader on the issue of India-Canada relations. The maximum he would have received is pushback because, as you have mentioned yourself, Devika, there has been no mention by the UAE leadership about this Canadian call or the content of the call.
Right.
So for him to keep on trying to disrupt and try to create some, a little bit of disruption here and there with India's relations with our close friends, I don't think is going to succeed. It's just going to backfire on him. The internal dynamics are against him and the external dynamics are also not in favor of him. So everything is stacked up very heavily against him. So he's trying whatever he can as a last resource. Thank you.
Mr. Kapoor, stay on with us. Professor Nalapat, bringing you into the conversations and just picking up from what Mr. Mukesh Aghi said. Let's assume that Justin Trudeau has to pretend that, okay, he does care about the Khalistani leaders and that he's going to do whatever he can to ensure that there's justice. So you come out in your parliament and you make a very scathing statement. You say that you have proof, you've not managed to give that proof out yet, but okay, you say all of that and you build that sort of a narrative within your own nation. But to take it one step ahead and then discuss it with the US, UK, discuss it with now the UAE, complain about India, talk about the rule of law, is it now just reflective of how deeply entwined Justin Trudeau's politics is with the so-called Khalistani cause? And should that now be troubling for the people of Canada, who really need to wake up and smell the coffee, smell the roses?
Well, I'd like to point out that the UAE very correctly deports terrorists to India. When you have a terrorist that has committed a terror attack in India and that terrorist tries to find sanctuary in the UAE, that individual is deported to India. Justin Trudeau protects terrorists and refuses to deport them to India. Not only refuses to deport them to India, he basically stands up as their champion, as the champion of those terrorists, and frankly makes a lot of false allegations against India. Now, look, I'm only looking at the circumstantial evidence. One very important thing that has been mentioned is basically about how this conflict that Hamas has launched on Israel, especially innocent Israelis, young Israelis in particular, it's designed to basically upset the project of the route from India to the Gulf countries and through Israel to Europe. And whom does that benefit? It benefits China. So unfortunately, Justin Trudeau has got a reputation for doing what is beneficial to China. You have some places in Canada, such as British Columbia, that there are. I mean, frankly, it's a matter of concern, or it should be, to the Canadian Secret Service, that the Chinese intelligence machinery operates very freely there, and in fact harasses and hassles individuals who are opposed to the kind of expansionism of China. And Khalistan is only one of the beneficiaries of this kind of largesse. This is going on in a NATO country. This is going on in a country that has no actual, border with the United States in terms of visa. People cross to and fro. And this man is trying to zero in on the India-UAE relationship. One of the strongest allies of India in the world is the UAE. And it is led by, MBZ, who, like MBS in Saudi Arabia, is a visionary leader who understands the importance of modernity, of moderation, and especially to the youth of the UAE and to the youth of Saudi Arabia. And this man, Justin Trudeau, is trying to meddle in that. Which country will benefit if he succeeds in that? It will not be, Canada, I can assure you. Canada has very little stake in this. It will be China. So why on earth is Justin Trudeau doing this? The entire circumstantial evidence, frankly, points to doing something that China will be happy with. And this is something which, I'm not making that allegation about Trudeau, that he's a Chinese agent. He's certainly, turning a blind eye to the activities of the Chinese Communist Party in many parts of Canada, and they're operating freely there. And in fact, as some friends have mentioned, that Vancouver, for example, is the headquarters of the operations chief of the directorate that is coordinating various kinds of attacks of one form or the other, including cyber attacks in the United States. They're operating from Canada. British Columbia is a territory that is extremely hostile to the interests of India. And in fact, it is dangerous for somebody to go there and say good things about India. It is dangerous for somebody to go there and say bad things about China. So this is what is happening in Canada of Justin Trudeau. Now, I'm not going to make any allegation except to point out once again the difference between Justin Trudeau and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, is that Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed understands what global terrorism is, and he deports terrorists to India. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau protects terrorists, refuses to deport them to India, and in fact tries to throw the blame on the victim rather than on the terrorist. Now, you can look at the evidence, you can look at the circumstantial evidence, you can look at the direct evidence, and you can draw your own conclusions whether Justin Trudeau is, as many people say, just somebody who's a clown or an idiot, or Justin Trudeau is playing the geopolitical game. But believe me, Devika, it is much bigger than pleasing a Khalistan lobby. This game that he is trying to play of distancing India from its closest Middle Eastern friends is actually a game that is designed to sabotage a project that is very important in linking the West Asia, India, and Europe together. And Justin Trudeau is acting as in a destructive way in a project that will be of great benefit to NATO countries in particular. And I think it's important for intelligence agencies across the world, including in Canada, to find out why he is acting in this way.
Absolutely. Master Pradeep Kapoor, your perspective on the same aspects, as Professor Nalapat was also pointing out, and then now there are, of course, a lot of theories doing the rounds about how there could be a possible Chinese hand in everything that's happened in Canada. There are already allegations against Justin Trudeau's party and its members of taking political funding from the CCP. What really do you think will now be the way forward given these sort of allegations against Justin Trudeau himself?
Thank you, Devika. I have a great respect for Professor Madhav Nalapat and his wisdom. And, having worked as a diplomat in different continents of the world, in different countries, I wouldn't put it beyond China to attempt to disrupt India on any forum and every forum. I've seen that happen personally in my own experience. Now, for the China hand to be playing out, because India has stood out very firmly against the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative of China. India, on the contrary, has created this India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, which was announced in the G20 meeting recently, which is going to be quite a game changer because the US has also signed on to it. Now, if that is, one part of the story, that the economic cooperation between the India and the Middle East, which has always been very good and has improved phenomenally in the last few years because of the steps taken by the Indian administration and the Middle Eastern countries. And now there's going to be, linkages, economic corridors, train routes, naval routes, road routes between India, Middle East and Europe. It is going to be a very different scenario altogether. Now for China to try to disrupt that is going to be a given, natural. So it may have tried to prop up Justin Trudeau because he seems to be under the influence of China, because his behavior is more like a leader of Pakistan than like a leader of the free world. I don't see any behavior of his which is commensurate with being one of the Western countries which would apply the rule of law and work hard on terrorists rather than giving them succor and protecting them. And self-proclaimed terrorists. It's not that these terrorists are hiding under any cover or umbrella. They are not sort of covert terrorists. They are overt terrorists. Every day they are announcing, we downed this Air India plane, we have killed this person, we have done this, we have done that. And then they are putting up displays of, the previous Prime Minister, one of the earlier Prime Ministers, having been assassinated in a very gory way in public places. Then they have been putting out posters of Indian diplomats as wanted. Now, which country in the world would permit that sort of thing? And it's a very low-life country which would do that. And for a Western country to permit that sort of, posters to be put up in public places of Indian diplomats being wanted, where Indian diplomats' lives are threatened, and it is very, very shameful. It is something which the whole world has to condemn, not just India. And I hope that, this thing is taken cognizance of. And if Vancouver is indeed one of the global hubs for Chinese to drive its global policies in a very aggressive manner, in a very negative manner against the Western countries, against India, it is something which needs to be thoroughly explored and exposed. So I guess I'll stop here. Back
Right.
to you, Devika.
Absolutely.
Devika, I just want to make one point.
Yes, Professor
And
Nalapat.
this AK-47 that this Mr. Nijjar was brandishing, he was brandishing it at a terror camp in Pakistan.
Yes.
Terror camp where other terrorists were being trained to attack targets in India and other locations. And even here, I mean, look at the location of that AK-47. It's
No,
not
but-
an AK-47 in his living room. It's not an AK-47 in the garage.
But
It's
Professor
in a terror
Nalapat,
camp in Pakistan.
at the cost of being a little cheeky, he probably came out of Canada and said he was providing plumbing services, no? To the terror camps in Pakistan. He was fixing the bathrooms there for the terror camps. That's probably what he told Canadian agencies. I mean, this is a conversation, of course, that requires a lot more time, but I thank both of our panelists for joining us to take us through their views on what's happening between India and Canada.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.